It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome back to another tier list. I thought in honor of Ultraman Day being yesterday, why not do an Ultraman tier list? And while I don't want to rank necessarily Ultras or their shows yet, just because I haven't seen all the shows, I've seen quite a few, but not all of them, and I want to do that before, so I have like a full breadth of knowledge, I thought let's rank Ultraman transformation items, because there's quite a few of them. I have thoughts on all of them, and we might as well. And on top of that, I do have a couple exclusions, just so this doesn't get sort of repetitive. I excluded any dark versions of devices, so no dark Orb Rings, no dark spark lenses, that sort of thing. I also excluded some of the more random ones, like Yulian's bracelet. There was... yeah, gosh, I'm trying to think of another example. Just other random devices that don't have that much going on, like her bracelet. There was another example. Oh, yeah, repetitive ones, such as the other versions of the Ultra Eye for, like, Ultraseven X. That got excluded. Same with, like, Shin Ultraman's beta capsule. They're still different in their own rights, but they're not different enough. I think that they're very much, they serve the same purpose. So I kind of cut it down. So I pare it down to pretty much the main devices from Ultraman through Decker. And yeah, I mean, I think this will work out pretty good to give you kind of an idea of the Ultraman device history. So on that note, let's take a look. So first things first, we have Ultraman's beta capsule. Now this is one of those sci-fi props that definitely looks like it was cobbled together from several parts and pieces. And I thought, you know, this is actually kind of a cool device, but it's not necessarily that exciting. It is really cool in the show because Shin basically holds it up, pushes a button, turns into Ultraman. It's very dynamic, but as a device on its own, it's iconic, but only for the sense that it was from the original Ultraman. So I'm going to put it in B for beta capsule. Next up, we have the Ultra Eye. Now this is iconic for Ultraseven, the sort of motion of having the Ultra Eye out, putting it towards the face, turning into Ultraseven. Like I said, they've used a version of this in Ultraseven, Heisei Ultraseven, and Ultraseven X. I'm not sure about Ultraseven 21 or 21, whichever way it's officially done. They're essentially like, it's a version of just you're putting on sunglasses and then you transform. And that's honestly cool, but it's not necessarily like the coolest looking device, especially when we're talking about the original Ultra Eye. So while I like the idea behind the Ultra Eye, in general, this one's kind of a C tier for me. Next up, we have Ultraman Ace's Ultra Rings. Now, originally, the Ultra Rings were worn by two different people, and they were able to do front flips and mash them together and then turn into Ultraman Ace. Eventually, this did just change to Hokuto, getting both rings to turn into Ultraman Ace. But I like the idea of rings. Something I noticed with a lot of the Showa Ultra devices is they're very conspicuous. Like the beta capsule could fit in a pocket, the Ultra Eye are sunglasses, and the rings could be worn at any time, and no one's gonna, you know, sort of question it. Like it's reasonable that no one would question, you know, Minami or Hokuto wearing rings because they're just rings. So I kind of like that a lot. So while, you know, I don't think design-wise they're that exciting because it's just pretty much the A symbol on a ring, I think that they actually deserve an A ranking only because they're kind of one of the more practical devices in terms of hiding an identity as an Ultra. Like, no one's questioning that because it's just a ring. Now, one that's less conspicuous, but again, still is small enough to fit in a pocket, is the Ultra Badge from Ultraman Taro. So the Ultra Badge is cool. I like the design of it. It definitely is interesting to see the different toy versions over the years. But essentially, it is just a thing that Taro holds up, and, you know, it's a transformation item. And the thing I really do like about it is its overall design. It's very 70s in a lot of ways, and it's kind of cool. But much like the beta capsule, it's only going to go in B tier just because while it is cool, it doesn't really do anything besides, you know, not necessarily that it needs to do anything, but it's not that exciting outside of, you know, its function as a transformation item. Next up, we have the Leo Ring. Now, the Leo Ring was for Ultraman Leo, of course, and just like with the Ace Ultra Rings, it's actually really cool because, again, it's very conspicuous. That being said, I don't like the design of the Leo Ring that much. I love lions, but the fact it's just a lion with a little jewel on top is kind of strange, and I'm not a super huge fan of it. So this one's also going to go C tier because I do like the ring idea. I just don't like the whole design, if that makes some sense. All right, next up we have Ultraman 80's Bright Stick. Now the Bright Stick is cool because it kind of reminds me of the beta capsule. It's obviously a device. This is where devices started getting a little larger. And yeah, the bright stick is neat. Something about it is just very strange looking. It's very alien, which I do like as well. I don't know. It's just, there's something about it that doesn't quite jive with me, but it's kind of cool at the same time. It's hard to explain, really. So when it comes to that, it's going to go in the B tier. I'll probably put it above the Ultra badge, just below the Beta Capsule. Okay, next up we have Ultraman Great's Delta Plasma. This thing's essentially just a triangle with a jewel. Pretty simple. It's not anything too complicated, but I kind of like its simplicity. That being said, it's still going to be a C tier item just because it does its job, but it's not that exciting otherwise. Now, Ultraman Powered it had the Flash Prism, and I think the Flash Prism is actually pretty cool. It's a little large, again, not as conspicuous as something like the rings, but the Flash Prism has a neat design. It's kind of like this oblong design. It has a coolness to it, and it's very toyetic as well. And, you know, honestly, in terms of devices, it pretty much does serve that same purpose like the Beta Capsule does, but I think it looks cooler. So I'm going to put, it's going to be a low A overall, but I definitely think Powered's Flash Prism is up there for me. All right, next up we have the Ultraman Neos Estrella. This thing is, it looks like it's trying to do what the Flash Prism tries to do, which is have like a cool alien-looking device, but it just looks awkward. It just really does, and it looks too big. It looks, you know, it's too big to be a nice small item. It's too small to be anything exciting. It's very strange. This one, I'm not a big fan of it. It's going to go in the D tier. Notice I didn't put an F tier on here. I didn't feel like any of these are that terrible. But yeah. All right, next up we have Ultraman Zygeri's Zygeri Brusher. And yes, that is a toothbrush. Zygeri is very silly. And, okay, it's a toothbrush. However, the fact that they, with their full chest, made an Ultraman that transforms with a toothbrush, I gotta give them credit for it. So, while as device-wise, it's basically just a fancy-looking toothbrush, and this is the toy version because I couldn't find a proper picture of the prop. It's a toothbrush. It works as a toothbrush. It's still a D-tier device because it's a toothbrush, but yeah, I'll give it credit for originality. They haven't done a toothbrush since. Now here's where we start getting into ones I really like with Ultraman Tiga's Spark Lens. This has got kind of what the Beta Capsule has, that simplicity of a small device you could fit in a pocket, being raised up and activated. But there is one key difference with the Spark Lens versus the Beta Capsule. With the Beta Capsule, he presses the button and the light shines. When Daigo uses the Spark Lens, it opens up. It has that spring open motion, and that adds so much dynamicism to the transformation. So it's not just hold up device, press button. It's hold up device, press button, thing opens up, and it flashes, and you become Tiga. And so for that, I really do like it. And then on top of that, I love like the ancient sort of look with the marble design on the handle and the more ornate nature of it. It gives it something that's otherworldly, but in a different way than just sort of sci-fi. So for me, the Spark Lens is an S tier item. Next up, we have Ultraman Dyna's Live Flasher. Now, Live Flasher is essentially just a rock that has a little light bulb that flips out of it. And I'm not a fan. It's got kind of sort of a neat look to it in some ways. I think my problem is that when the light flips up, there's just this gap in the rock. Like, I kind of wish it would do like a 180 flip so that it replaces the space, because it just looks really gappy and weird. And so for that, I don't like the Live Flasher that much. I'm going to put it below the toothbrush. I don't know if that's controversial, but it's going below the toothbrush. Next up, we have Ultraman Gaias Splendor, and the Splendor is kind of a weird little thing because essentially it's like a wrist brace that gets put out like this. It sort of reminds me of the Dino Buckler from Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, except not really, because it doesn't really do anything. It sort of just lights up. It's okay. I think that, you know, with the TGG trilogy, as iconic as it is, Tiga sort of really knocked it out of the park. Gaia's Splendor, it's not as cool. I'm going to put it in the B tier, though, because it's not a bad design. It's just not as exciting. Now, that being said, Alghul's Alghulator is actually kind of cooler because it has these two little wing things that start at the beginning and then spread out. And while the thing, it looks really big and it's a little bit more cumbersome than Gaia's, Alghul's actually has more dynamicism to it because it has that spring out thing. When you have a device, if it's going to be just a device that's held, and you're not doing anything with like sticking a gimmick item into it or anything like that, it's really cool when it has a spring open motion. It really adds a lot to it. So while I don't love it, it's going to go above the Bright Stick in the B tier. All right, so now we're going to get into some weird ones. There's some ones that don't really have proper toys, but the Ultraman Nice Dreamer. Ultraman Nice was a character that was a mascot in commercials, and the Nice Dreamer is a transformation watch that flips open, and Nice takes a piece of candy and eats it. And I wonder if that's why Zayurth and Nice, outside of being kind of weird, wacky Ultras, they got paired up in Ultra Galaxy Fight because, well, after you eat Nice's candy, you're going to need to use the toothbrush that Zayurth has, right? Anyways, it's actually pretty cool because, honestly, if you ignore, like, the weird candy holder part of it, looking at the prop from the Nice commercials, I actually really like the design of it. More wrist-worn Ultraman devices would be cool. Like, we only have 3, including this one, so it's actually kind of nice. It's a watch that looks a little like a fancier watch, and then it has like a candy dispenser. You know, honestly, this one's going in the A tier. I really like it. Yeah. So next up we have Ultraman Cosmos's Cosmos Pluck, which just sounds weird, but I actually once again like this. So it's kind of like the Beta Capsule. It's actually the same shape as the Beta Capsule or the Bright Stick, except the top part splays open into 3 parts and the little jewel part pops out. So you get a really dynamic action feature thing where you push the button and it shoots up and it splays open. And honestly, that's again pretty cool. You can win me over with a cool action feature like that. So the Cosmo Pluck, it's going to go in the A tier, again for spring open stuff. And I overall like its design. It kind of reminds me of the Spark Lens. It's got more of a regal look with the golds and the whites. And I really like that. Next up, Ultraman Justice's Just Lancer. This one wasn't designed to be a toy, so it kind of has a Showa throwback in that vibe. It is just a small device that, you know, is used to turn it into Ultraman Justice. And I like the design of it. It's very ornate. The overall wing design is cool. I don't really know if it fits Justice's vibe because it doesn't look like it goes with Justice, but it is cool looking. So it's going to go in the C tier, I think. Just because it does look cool, it just doesn't look that cool. And again, no special sort of feature to it. All right, next up, Ultraman Nexus's Evolt Thruster. Ignore the gun in the photo. I just couldn't find a better photo of the Evolt Thruster that wasn't a WebP. Terrible image format that doesn't work with a lot of things. Anyways, the Evolt Thruster itself is this sort of dagger because when a Dunamis turns into Nexus, you hold the sheath, you pull the dagger part out, and then turn it into Nexus. And I really like that. It's not a spring open gimmick. It's a little bit more autonomous. Like, you have to do more yourself. It's not just push a button. But it's always really cool, and the way that, you know, it's used in the show to transform is always really dynamic, and I really, really like it. It doesn't hurt as well that Nexus is my favorite Ultraman show, so when it comes down to it, I have a little bit of bias towards the device because of the love for the show. But in terms of devices, I think it's actually pretty good, but I'm going to put it right below the Spark Lens. There's something about it that I wish it could do a little more in terms of, you know, I really like the idea of pulling out the dagger, that sort of dynamic motion for Nexus, and it works in show, but then when you have if you have the device outside of the show, which I don't currently, I want to get the Ultra Replica someday, it doesn't have as many spark effects that you do in the series. So it does lose a little bit there, but I think it does have a really solid, easy to use design, and it's conceivable that it would fit inside a pocket, which is a big plus. Next up, we have the Ultraman Max Spark. This one, it's okay. It's funny because I think this thing looks like a wrist brace item, even though it's not technically. But the Max Brace, it looks cool, it's ornate, but it comes down to the same thing like the Beta Capsule, where it's just a thing and you push a button. And for that, it's going to go in the B tier. It's going to go, I think, below the Bright Stick. I like the Bright Stick a little bit more. It's kind of a weird design too. Some of these get a little abstract. All right, next up, Ultraman Mobius's Mobius Brace. Absolutely love this one. So this one is a wrist brace, so it goes on his wrist, and when Mirai goes to transform, he slides across the little ball that's in the middle of it, and it spins, and he turns into Mobius. And it goes with the whole, like, infinity, maybe the Mobius loop, which Mobius has got a design theme with. Love it. It looks cool. I love the reds and the golds. I love the spinny feature. I would absolutely love to own the Ultra Replica version of this one day, but the price is way too much. But honestly, for me, this is an S tier, probably going above the Ginga Spark lens, because with the Spark lens, you know, it's got that feature, but there's something cool about spinning. Like, I can simulate it, and I'm like, oh man, if I had that, that would be even better. Also, because Mirai doesn't wear it all the time, it vanishes into light when he's not using it. So again, it goes with the whole hides your identity really well. Going alongside that, on a similar vein, the Ultraman Hikari's Night Brace. And the Night Brace, I think, is actually pretty cool, because the Night Brace essentially is sort of two parts. You have, like, sort of a sheath that goes on the wrist, or this wrist, I mean, and then there's a little knife thing that slides into it to transform. And so it's got kind of that knight vibe to it with the sheath, or the scabbard, and then the blade. And I really like that a lot. I don't think I love it as much as the Mobius Brace, because I think the spinny gimmick is fun, but the fact it's got the slot in part is really cool. So it's going to go in the S tier as well, just below the Evolt Thruster. They both have kind of a similar idea going on. But yeah, no, that would be an Ultra Replica set. Is like, man, I want Mobius to have an anniversary and Bandai to do a version 2 of that set, because it goes for so much. But I totally want those two devices, because I think they're so cool. Next up, we have Ultraman Zero's Ultra Zero Eye. This is essentially in the same vein as the Ultra Eye for 7, with Zero being 7's son. That makes sense. I like it. I think that it actually works a little better than the Ultra Eye, because it's put up to the face and then a button is pushed, which makes it a little bit more interesting than just put it up to face. And I like the way that it was used in the other versions of it, like the Ultra Eye Neo, since that worked with the Zed Riser. And I think that it's cool. It's not a favorite of all time, but I'm definitely going to put it above the Ultra Eye, probably just below the Agulator. It's cool. I like it. I don't love it, but you know, I think the Ultra Eye concept is great. And I'd love to see something really take advantage of that idea one of these days. Next up, we have the Ginga Spark. I like this one. It's kind of, this is the first one to use Spark Dolls. So essentially with the Ginga Spark, oh wait, I can show you an example. So the Ginga Spark itself, here's the deluxe one. The idea behind it is that you have the Ginga Spark, and then you use one of the Spark Dolls, which I don't have the one with the little stamp on it, and it scans it, and then he turns into Ultraman Ginga. And I like it. I like it. You know, it's got that very much that open dramatic thing and the button push thing that I really like. And I do like the Spark Doll inclusion, because Spark Dolls being just basically Ultra Vinyls that are a little bit smaller. So I do like this device quite a bit, but it's not one of my favorites of all time. It's weird, because I do like it a lot, and I do have this deluxe one. But, you know, it's going to go in the A tier above the Ultra Rings, and because like one of the things I do like is that in the show, you don't have to have, Ginga's not carrying around his Spark Doll all the time. He opens it up, and then the Spark Doll materializes, so he can grab it and then do the transformation part, which I think is really cool. So I like it. It's definitely an A tier, not an S tier, but it's honestly, it is a cool device. The other one from Ginga would be Ultraman Victory's Victory Lancer, which works in a similar way with the Spark Dolls. It starts in a gun form, and then it scans onto the part there, and it turns into a lance. I like it. It's a little overly complicated. I like the 2-in-1 feature of it, because that's kind of unique for Ultraman. There's like only one other device on here that is a gun and a transformation item, and there is a transformation feature within the item. So I'm going to put this one probably in the B tier as well. I know the B tier is a little loaded, but that's just where we're at. You know what? I dropped it by accident next to the Agulator, but I think that's about where I like it. It's cool. I think it's a little overly complicated, but it's neat. Next up, we have the X-Divisor, another one I own. I don't own the Spark Doll for this one, or any of the cards. But the X-Divisor is, honestly, it's neat. I like the overall shape of it. I like that it's a communication device, and I like that you can talk to X within it. See, there's X there. But what's kind of neat about it is that you have this open function, which splits it open. You can put cards in it for different forms, or scan the Spark Doll on top of it to transform. And I like that. I like that feature a lot. I think in toy form for both this, the Ginga, and the Victory Lancer, those all have a problem that they don't come with the Spark dolls. In the original deluxe toys, you had to buy them separate, which is a problem when you're trying to buy it like after the fact. But I do like the device itself. I like the opening function, and I like the way that it can do cards or Spark dolls. So, you know what? This one's also going in the A tier, just above Ginga. I try to keep the S tier as a top 5. I really do in these tier lists. And I already know what's going in number 1. And that is what we're next at. I think it should be no surprise that I love the Orb Ring. I did, you know, like an hour and a half's worth of video on the Ultra Replica version. It's the only Ultra Replica I currently own. It was the first one I bought. In terms of design, I love it. I love the scanning feature where you put the cards in. I love the opening feature like that. That is the stuff that I really love about it, because it's not just you use the device as a device. I love the spring open nature. That always hits me. I think that should go without question. This is my favorite Ultraman transformation item, and I don't know if anything will ever top it. This is probably peak Ultra for transformation devices for me. All right, so a few more here. The Zed Riser. Now, I do like the Zed Riser. I like the idea of you take 2 capsules, you put them in the little loader, and then you scan it across. Very dynamic. Doesn't have a spring open function, but I like that there's a lot of like motion, things to do with it. I think a lot of the reason why some of the older devices, even though they were probably better designed and not as cumbersome, like with the Orb Ring, I don't know how Guy hides that thing. I don't know how Riku hides the Zed Riser. But there is a lot of cool stuff going on. But with Orb, with Zed, with X, with Ginga, with Victory, they don't do too much to where it's exhausting. It's just sort of dynamic. And so I think that while the other more Showa and Heisei designs for devices are a little bit more conspicuous, a little bit quicker and easier to use, they're not as exciting as devices, if that makes some sense, which is kind of where we're ranking the devices. Now the Zed Riser, I think this thing's great. I'm going to put it probably just below the X Divisor. It's definitely one of my favorites of all time. I'm still surprised the nice device is up there, but I really do like the Zed Riser. It's really dynamic, and I love the little like DNA hexagon, the DNA strand idea in the middle. All right, now we've been talking about the Bandai gimmick items pretty strong so far, but I've got thoughts on the Rube Gyro. So remember how I said, like, you know, they're dynamic, but they're not overly complicated? Rube Gyro is. If you ever watched the show, it takes them 2 minutes to transform on average. It's exhausting because you have to put a crystal in and then pull on it a whole lot. Like, it should have just been 1 pull, maybe 2, not like the 3 or 4 that it is. It's kind of ridiculous. I don't like this thing that much. It's going to be above the toothbrush, but it's still going in the D tier. Next up, Ultraman Taiga's Ginga Spark. I actually like this one. It's kind of a little bit strange because it is a wrist-mounted brace, and then you grab things to scan them, like the keychains, or there's the rings and the bracelet things. There's 3 gimmicks going on, which is way too much. I do like the overall general idea. You just grab the keychain, and then it scans it, and then you can pull it and transform and all that. But it is overly complicated with all the other gimmick items, and it's kind of ridiculous. But, you know, I do love Taiga, but I think this one's going to go in the B tier, probably just above the Max Spark. Just about roundabouts there. All right, Zed Riser goes back to sort of an easier, quicker thing. You load 3 metals, you scan them 1 across, you transform into Zed. It's pretty cool. I do want to own one of these sometime. I kind of want to see if they'll do an Ultra Replica version in a few years, just so I can get all the medals at once and all the authorization cards. But, you know, it's cool. It also works as a weapon. That's definitely a positive. And I think this one's going to go in my A tier. Probably just above Ginga. I think just above Ginga is pretty good. All right, next up we have Ultraman Trigger's Guts Spark Lens. Now, this thing is a gun weapon that turns into a spark lens that's sort of like Tiga's. What I don't like about it is that you have the gun, and then you have to open it up to become the spark lens. I kind of wish, and I don't know if this would be a safety thing, but if you put one of the hyper keys in the bottom, and then it sprung open because it was an ultra hyper key, and if you put a hyper key in that's not like an Ultraman form, it would just stay as the gun. That would have been really cool, but as is, because it's kind of just like, oh, and then it's not that exciting. I think it looks cool. I think it's kind of weird that everybody had the gun form on the team, and then, you know, Kengo's was the only one that went, woo, it opens up. Yeah, that one's kind of weird, but I think this one's going to go in the B tier for me. I like it, but it's not, it doesn't have the simplicity and it doesn't have the dynamic action of the Ginga Spark lens for me. And then lastly, we got Ultraman Decker's Ultra D Flasher. This thing has been called many names. Coffee mug. From me, I called it the Big Stupid Rock, but bigger. And it's honestly kind of grown on me. I think it does look better than Dyna. Dyna's device just being the small rock. This is a bigger one. I like the handle, and I like the card system, even if it's just using like decade-style barcodes. You know, you put the barcode in, you flip it up, and then you call out Decker's name. It's cool. I like that it's got the spring open feature, and I like that it's got cards. I really do love cards. I love cards. You can see that, like, you know, X and Orb are pretty high up. You know what? I think it's going to go in the B tier above Ginga. I think if it was a little bit more streamlined, I think it's a little too, like people have said, it's like a coffee mug. It's huge. It's really big. I think it was a little smaller, which, I mean, that wouldn't have worked with the cards. I don't know. It just doesn't totally work for me, but I do think it's kind of neat overall. So that's the tier list. I'm not going to run these down again. If you want to run them down again, just watch the video again. But essentially, that's my list. You know, I think that Ultraman has a lot of really cool devices, and there's some that are a little weaker. But as you can see, you know, most of them hit the A and B tier. But yeah, my top 5 is that Orb Ring, the Mobius Brace, the Spark Lens, the Evolt Thruster, and the Night Brace. And I own one of those in Ultra Replica. I'd like to own all 5 someday. We'll see how, you know, the chips may fall. I'm getting ready for the Dark Ring coming soon for Ultra Replica Orb. But yeah, I mean, this is my list, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button. Leave a comment down below. Tell me your favorite Ultraman transformation item. And also be sure to subscribe to the notification bell to keep up with future Ultraman videos and other Tokusatsu videos on the channel. Check out Hero Club at hero-club.com for Ultraman news and more, and my awesome graphic designer on Twitter at darkclaw643. And until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.